Hey, it's Amy from Following Hawks. And if you didn't know, I have a podcast called The Earth Keepers. And this season, we are exploring one branch of my family tree to ask the question, what happens when an entire group of people leave the only land they've ever known? And we're following that thread back through the pioneer days of the Mormon Church and then back to Sweden. So I hope you'll go on this journey with me over on the podcast at The Earth Keepers. I'll add a link down in the notes below. And this particular video is the full version of my past life reading with Carey Kaas. So you can hear this on episode 2 of the podcast. You can hear bits and pieces of it. And then here on YouTube, you can hear our entire discussion. So enjoy.
As we stand at the doorway of the Akashic records, we enter this divine realm with a sense of respect, integrity, and an open, aligned hearts. We now call upon the guardians of the records, our higher selves, benevolent star families, the archangels, ascended masters, the Rose Council, councils of light, to help illuminate our journey to the clearest and most divinely aligned path. We ask that you allow us to see the records for Amy Dempster. We ask that you allow us to experience the records for Amy Dempster. We ask that you allow us to heal the records for Amy Dempster. We ask that you allow us to gently reach the highest ascension for Amy Dempster and all concerned. The records are now open, amen. The records are now open, amen. The records are now open, amen. Okay. So we begin this journey, Amy, with the journey which has been shown to us through our Sasquatch and Bigfoot ancestry, family, and lineage. And as we gather together as a group of support guardians for both you and for the planet, and we reveal the story to you of your own ancestry and your part in the ascension of our world and planet, because you play a very pivotal part. And so as I'm here, I'm connecting in with the lineage of your Bigfoot family, but also seeing that they are the guardians and go-betweens between the earth realm and the spirit realm, which many are slowly getting to know their role gently and through discovery of through the heart chakra. And so they're telling the story for me for this part of your journey. And we have your questions here, which I like to be able to have a guideline to flow through, but feel free to ask questions at any time. And so our Sasquatch family is here. And they, of course, just for those who aren't as familiar with them, they work with us in many ways. And in this sense, they're very much connected to our heart chakras, which means that they're connected to the highest divine intentions for our lifetimes here on the planet. And they act as protectors and go-betweens, and they are able to explain resonance and energy extremely well when you vibrate with them and connect with them, as you know very well. And so what they're explaining to me through their frequency and their networking abilities, as you know, they cast out this net of the entire planet, and they share messages and information, and they bypass the human consciousness to get to the heart and also the soul information. That's why we can't physically see them with our eyes, because they are in a realm that is, they want to remain preserved and pristine in its integrity. And so as we look at these things that have happened on the earth plane in history, we're going to be now, instead of looking at what's we've been indoctrinated with, to be able to look at actually what happened energetically, spiritually, and what was laid down as patterns. So what they're telling me is that this Joseph Smith, so we're going to be talking about the LDS Church, the Mormons that inhabited and have inhabited this United States region, as we know, since the 1800s. And so we're going to be first looking at the creator of, or the bringer forth of this information, which we know to be embodied Joseph Smith. And so we see, first of all, that Joseph Smith is part of the Pleiadian heritage, that he actually came down and had this agreement to be able to bring this message forth, which was really divine in its initial aspirations. It really was meant to be a fifth dimensional reality brought through as a frequency for people to live in harmony and communion and to support each other. But unfortunately, it was infiltrated by bastardization of the information. This is what they're telling me, that word. I'll just go with that. And also it was hijacked and cultivated into something much more destructive than it was meant and intended to be. And this was simply because of, we like to call it the lower frequencies of the physical body. And put a lot of, there's many themes here, which we will share with you throughout. So as he received this vision, as is known as when he connected and got this vision as a teen, where he received these initial images and so-called templates, they were actually, as you well are aware, they were more in a frequency of the fifth dimension. So they weren't actually 3D physical, they were imagery and seen as being something that he saw when he was in the astral realm. So he sees the vision, he gets the information, he receives it into his body, he has the vision, he went to spread it out. And this is where we then get destructive with what occurred. So he moved forward with this. And as the vision began to roll through, the polarizations started taking hold. The primary issue here is tearing apart masculine and feminine, and acting as if and behaving as if the land was such that was meant to be controlled, pulled apart, dominated, feared, in the belief that this was part of the ascension process. This was the underlying cultivation of this religion and this new thought movement. And so, like many other cults and many other religions that have polluted this earth plane with essentially a concept and idea, Joseph Smith took this and the lower energies then made it occur. So it got stymied in the third chakra. So what we were seeing is this fluting to siphoning down, and the vision was slightly in the heart chakra to that point, but even then it got taken over by the lower frequencies. So then we move forward to location. This is the next thing they're showing, which is more of importance. Is, of course, we know many things that happened to Joseph Smith, that he was, his vision was taken over then by the other members of the church. And so everything got polarized and controlled and slanted, as many religions do. And especially when it came to the divine feminine. So as we know, Mother Earth is representative of the divine feminine, as well as women reflect that in the 3D world, but also their control of people's relationships, how relationships should play out, what roles women served, what roles men served. Everything became infiltrated into the culture. Now they're bringing me forth completely into your family timeline. And this is where it gets interesting. So we want to go back to the life, and they're showing me a specific life. Yes, you were there. And the picture I got, I see you being a male, but I'll tell you more about your incarnation there, because, and I see you with what we know to be like the, oh my gosh, what are they called? This, suspenders. Yes. And you almost looked a little bit Amish in your look. And you were about 13. That's what I'm seeing. Okay. So the other thing is, and I'll tell you more about your Scandinavian, that family that came over that ended up there, and I'll tell you about them in a moment. But with your life in particular, you were I would say you were male, but you were very fluid. So you were not this heavy gender of a male. And almost when I looked at you at first, I thought female, and then I thought male. And then they said to me, and therein lies what the problem was, is that you did not fit into this category whatsoever. And I see your parents recognizing that right away and almost circling around you in protection, because they knew what was in store for you if you followed through on this path, which was very fluid, not being so stuck in these roles, being very, first of all, you're very tuned in to nature and animals, and very psychic and intuitive in that way. And you channeled and got information even from the land. So everything that we know to be about your personality now was then, but almost more so. I feel like you were very in like the connected to like your dream state and to the spirit world big time, and you floated in and out just a little bit like this. So there was a lot of that that resided within you. And going back to a couple of things that they told me a little bit about, because they were giving me these really heavy themes. Here we go. Okay. Toxic masculinity, control, polarization. And you were a young male, but very non-binary. And you were trapped in this Mormon grid. So this is where I feel like I see issues in your legs and your lower body. And then also they are showing me, I'm looking at the actual land, even where you lived on. I know there was a question about Salt Lake City and snakes, and there's just definitely something coming in about that. But I feel like almost like the land was absorbed. At least there's a layer they are showing me. I want to say it doesn't go all the way down to its core at all in this area, but it's probably at least 10 feet, maybe 8 to 10 feet in its absorption of this programming, the toxicity, just in general, the thought forms that came from all of these people and the agreements that were made just kind of got absorbed into the land. The other thing there, so going further back, so they're all showing me the reason your ancestors came into this in the first place was really because they wanted this community, they wanted family, they wanted support, they wanted to live in this divine union, which they thought was kind of like heaven on earth. It was very idealistic, obviously. And it's also like, oh, coming to America, and then we have this experience where we meet these wonderful people and we raise our children together and we live off the land. And they really found that that was not the case, obviously, that actually they felt like the Mormons were more disconnected from the land than especially the indigenous people around them, but even just normal everyday farmers, they felt that, and the people that they felt like, wow, we're this sect trying to control everything, manipulate everything. And we feel entrenched in this dogma. And it wasn't just you that felt that way. It was the whole family felt that way. And there's a real push pull. And I also feel like your parents were very worried about you, and like anyone would be today, about their child that didn't fit into a mold, and especially with this religious sect. So there was so much to do with that. So they were really showing me feet, hips, legs.
Well,
Yes.
and on that note
Yes.
about kind of how the parents felt or whatnot, I had this very, very strong sense, or kind of vision when I was on one of the trips when I went to Utah, and I was at the cemetery in outside of Ogden, and standing there and looking back at the mountains, and was really kind of shown like they made this journey with this belief and with this understanding of what it was going to be like. And when they got there, they realized it wasn't as promised, it wasn't as sold, and there was just nothing to do about it, right? Like, you had traveled in whatever 1870 and everything that was required to get yourself to Utah, and you would have been surrounded by everyone else in the faith. Like, that would have been your community, that would have been the only people you knew, probably the only people that spoke the language. And you had no choice but to just get on board and get with the program. And that was really what my sense was of, you know, I don't know about everybody, but at least there was at least one kind of group of ancestors that were showing that to me.
That is exactly what I saw. Exactly. And I mean, so here's the beautiful part about your parents were very supportive of you as a soul. That's what I felt. It wasn't as though, you know, they were trying to get you to change. If anything, they're trying to protect you. It's almost like, you know, they circled around you for protection. And I want to go down the lineage and see what happened, to see what, if there's trauma points, things like that, for sure. But it's so funny right now. I'm hearing the word like heresy, heresy. That's what they're hearing from the church. So I'll look at that, see what that's about. But let's go back to the land itself being literally, it absorbed this information, this negative information, this dogma, this practice. And also there were so many people in pain emotionally and spiritually from this disconnect. And also, so all that trauma just got absorbed into the land. So when I asked, because you had an amazing question, and I would love you to ask and talk to us about this, but you were saying you had, in your journey, you were having visions of snakes underneath Salt Lake City. I want to hear about that, and then I want to tell you what I saw.
And one of the reasons that I asked that question was because for what I did see, there was a lot, and this is part of my ongoing problem with figuring these things out. Like I don't understand a lot about the church. I don't understand, you know, a lot of those pieces. And so a lot of times I get these visions or these dreams or these journeys and I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. I don't, you know, I need an interpreter. But so I'm not 100% on what I saw. What I saw was caverns, tunnels, rooms, you know, really in underground. I could see it on a map. Like I was also shown in this, like on a map. So I felt pretty confident, like this is under Salt Lake City, or that general area in Utah. And there was a lot of snake energy there that seemed to be not only connected to the church, but connected to like religions of the world, right? And that they're all kind of feeding into and holding this grid. And so the snakes were the grid around the earth. They are one grid that is kind of holding these religious beliefs together for people. And so if you're connected and your beliefs are kind of connected to those beliefs, like it's really difficult to unwind yourself from them because the snakes were like all wound kind of tightly together and holding this grid around the earth. So that was one piece of what I was shown. There is also, I don't know what was happening in those undergrounds. It was not pleasant. It was not good. It potentially connected to abuse of women and children, perhaps ritualized type abuse, but I didn't see any of it specifically. In the journey, I was watching it play out. So I couldn't exactly tell. I realized afterwards, you know, there was an adult holding a child, a small child or a baby. And so I just initially thought, well, I'm the adult with this baby. And then in the weeks afterwards, I'm like, maybe I was the baby. I don't know. I'm not sure, you know what, but the woman was having to hand the baby over to the church, I guess, or whatever was happening. And there was a lot of trauma between, you know, the feeling that this isn't the right thing to do, but it's the thing I have to do, or it's connected to my belief system in some way. So, and of course, the child didn't understand what was happening, what was about to happen, what was going to happen. And in the midst of all of these kind of rooms and caverns and, you know, underground tunnels and whatnot, there were snakes everywhere. And so it was all connected. But in that, I was also shown that, the snake and the feminine both, are connected, and they're connected to the land. And
Yes.
so women belong to the land, snakes belong to the land, and it was always a very holy thing. And religion, in kind of just a general sense, has really twisted and removed that, and kind of not only removed women from the land, removed people from the land in general, but also taken the snake, um, imagery, whatever, the I'm not coming up with the right word, but the snake
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
it was,
Mhm.
and really kind of turned it on its head. So that's the
Exactly.
kind of general, what I was shown.
Yes, and just to say, I'll look at this in the Akash, but I was going to say that um, the perversion and control of the snake being, let's represented within Kundalini, as we know, sensuality, divine feminine, that there was a perversion of it, a control, a manipulation. And that is one thing that they really did show me whilst you were when I looked at that question specifically for you. But let me go in and see if there's anything else specifically. um,
Yeah, because I don't know if what I was seeing was literal
Yes, or
or,
more
you
because
know,
we do know there are things going on the subterranean level, which
right.
are on an energetic, and also we know that there are corrupt beings that get involved. We just know this to be so. This is part of the mess of what Earth's going through. Um, and I did come up with some things about that in particular. So they can't, oh, okay, there's so many good things to talk about. Okay, so they're telling me it's a perversion of the feminine, and that's the whole content, as I said, of the polarization of masculine and feminine, that is all about control and domination. And in the name of God, that's the information that just keeps coming through and through and through, is that they took this concept, which was meant to be like a holy realm that they wanted to create on the earth plane, and everything ran through the lower chakras, where there was corruption, perversion, and all these programs that made everything completely go astray. But also, as we can still see when we have these controlling bodies of either politics or religious groups or what have you, that there are they do things, as we said, in the name of this church, this identity, this God, and they try to control a mass and then take away people's own connection to spirit and wisdom from them based on all this. So I just kept seeing it in the symbolism for you. What they're showing me in this moment, in this picture, really has to do with corruption and polarization of masculine and feminine, and control, and divide and conquer. There's a big thing about division, and we already know that that's essentially right, 3D realm, and that's the way they try to get you, is by separating everybody. So let me do this though. I want to look because there's a couple things that came up as far as healing for you, and contracts and vows and any of those things. And I wanted to take a look at that, but I want to see what happened to you in this lifetime, because I kind of sense that your family pulled away from the group in some way. But let me see exactly kind of what happened for you. So I feel like you did end up getting married to a woman, but you lived on your own terms, and you didn't see yourself again as masculine or feminine, but rather as a being, a soul. And so you decided, literally, they're telling me to make the most of your life and to live with someone at least where there was love and companionship. And I am seeing there were 2 children, and first being a boy, and I feel like the boy was a lot like you. I can feel it. I almost feel like you gave birth to the boy on some level, like it was part of you. The boy is part of you. And then there was a girl, the girl being a child that had a lot of health issues. I can almost see this moving forward. Like her aura looks much more transparent, translucent, like there was major health issues. So you found your way in purpose, but you completely retreated. Your inner life was disconnected from the church. So you just made your way and lived sort of in secrets, like a lot of probably Mormons these days who don't believe anything that they are signed up for, but they live their own way. And so this is what you were resolute to decide that this was fine. I was wondering how your life would kind of play out, but you just had a very intuitive relationship with your parents. It's not like you had this conversation where you sat down and they said, okay, that they said, this is not what we signed up for, this is going to be horrific. But they basically, you had this intuitive knowing that this was not what you had planned, but to live as much in love as you could. And that's exactly what you did. But there was some vow made at that point that you were going to come back and right the situation on some level. And it had a lot to do because you're so connected in with the spirit realm around you, both in the land, a lot to do with animals, and balance out these imbalances, which we say are the male female, and that just the pulling apart. And this, you also really saw this pulling apart families, pulling apart kids from their parents. It's just like the destruction of that. And you also, because you were so clairvoyant, you could almost see, it's interesting, we're talking about the viper or the snake, which we know there's a beautiful part of it, but we know there's also a corrupt part of it, just like anything. And you would see the leaders who were known to be whoever, the priests in the church, you almost saw psychically their embodiment of their lies and the corruption and the control. You just had no respect for them. And you would just literally put your head down and shake your head because you were so activated and you couldn't help but see these things. This is just a big part of it. And I feel it a lot in my third chakra. You just really had this conflict that your whole family really never kind of got over. It's interesting, they're saying you had a sister, but your sister left the church. It's like your sister left and made her way out west, actually. Very interesting. That's a whole, like so parts of your family, it's not everyone stayed in there. She broke off and left the church and left and really literally moved when California was making its way, Nevada, California. So that's one piece of the puzzle. I'm going to go back to.
And was this,
yes.
so was this life, or was this person,
yes,
in the same lineage I am in now?
yes,
This is an actual, like, literal ancestor, not like
yeah,
a separate.
yeah. This is you. This is you in an incarnation. That's what they're showing me. It was
in
really
the same lineage that I'm in now.
yes,
The same family.
that's what they're telling me,
Okay.
and that's what I'm getting. So
I also wonder, so this is interesting because this has been where I've, kind of been trying to figure out some of this work the last few years. And I had this feeling that there was something that I'm supposed to be fixing, right? That with regard to the grids, the water, all of these things. And so I thought, gosh, I hadn't really had any visions around it, but I was like, was I one of the people that was manipulating these grids and now I'm fixing it? But what it feels like from what you're saying is actually, I could just see it. I could see what these people were doing.
That's what it was.
Feel it and knew what needed to be fixed.
That's exact, and you couldn't do it then. That's it's so clear to me. And it's so interesting you said the water, because that really came up in my notes. Hang on one sec as we look back through these copious amounts of notes.
I got that message maybe earlier this year. I think before my trip to Utah, was that the water and the grids are linked. And so when you're talking about that top 10 feet or whatever, what I feel like, it's almost like, if you say something is in the water, right, or whatnot,
yes,
like, it's another form of control, right? If the frequencies are in the water and you're drinking the water and you're bathing in the water, like, you're absorbing those frequencies. So there was a message that came through about helping the water to get back to its organic frequency.
That is right on my notes, water. Okay, and listen to this is so giving me all the feels. So, okay, so something, okay, so first of all, they're saying Scandinavian ancestors. This is another piece, right? We're breaking this down. And they said, this is what I got: water, making things better. They're confirming your ascension process. And they're also saying casting a net for reclamation and upgrades of transformation. So this is what they showed. I'm getting the chills on my legs. Okay. So they're showing me, like a fisherman, you're casting this net, and that's the way you're doing the energy work. And that it's, and then this kind of comes in and captures these energies and then transforms them and transmutes and alchemizes them. And they really clearly said the water as well. They were very much talking about that. So it's okay. So first of all, energetically, in no way do I see your psychic footprint, your spiritual footprint of ever causing any destruction. If anything, you were shut down and repressed because you couldn't do the work that you saw the destruction that was being done. And so you just vowed, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this energetic work because I love this land. And this was like one of my soul's intention was to live in harmony with the land. That was my whole vibration, was that I would have this space that would be mine. Not mine, but that where I could really celebrate the land and live in link and arm in arm with the land. And so that was a big part of it as far as what, they showed me. I will say that was very big. So, okay. I love that. So again, the Salt Lake City, let's go back to that. There's the full of snakes. That's really just like the heart of corruption, of the separation, masculine and feminine, the toxicity, the programming, and also the lower chakras just being where they should be activated and connected and flowing with the earth and with Gaia and Divine Mother. They are separated apart and just fettered. And hence why a lot of people have the lower legs and the first chakra, hips, joints. There is basically, because the energy couldn't flow correctly, it is there is, I'm trying to, the picture I'm getting is sort of like everything's clenched and everything's tight, and as almost like the tissue is tight. One thing they're telling me for you personally that will really help is to reclaim through your physical body your connection, of course, to Mother Earth and that land, but that you're now relieving yourself of the burden of having to hold this frequency because you're already doing the work, right? So it's like you came in with, okay, I'm going to work on this, and this is, I'm carrying this burden, but now you can release it. Now you can let it go because it's not yours to carry anymore. You are doing all the work. And so you don't need to be reminded, right? So that served as kind of like a mark of reminding you to stay conscious. But obviously you got the memo a very long time ago. And so you don't need that sort of physical remembrance, if that makes sense, because I almost see you being surrounded. You know how in Snow White, she would have all of the birds and, the magical forest animals and all the pixies, yes. And everyone was around her and helping her. And so that's what I see with you. It's more like release that burden. You don't need to carry that any longer because you have done your due diligence and we're staying conscious, you're doing the work, you're helping heal this. As are many others who are connected to this faith. It's crumbling, right? We see that now, obviously, right? It's crumbling. So you can release it and know that you are holding the land fast. I see that all that land just literally has flipped now to the higher frequency. It's not, you've done it. It's accelerated. It's part of the, a reigniting of, what it was meant and designed to be when those templates were shown to Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell. Would have been nice if it was Joseph Campbell.
Different mystic.
Yes, right. Another mystic. So, right. Exactly. He would have gotten the memo. But anyway, so how do you,
can I,
oh yes.
Can I ask one thing about Joseph Smith? I'm just out of my own curiosity. How much, or when we say that, like, the information was corrupted, right? Like, he has this divine download, but
Yep.
there's interference. Do you get the sense that it's like outside interference with other energies and entities, or like he got power hungry and realized that he can control people and went off script?
So here's what happened. I see him very trapped in his second chakra. He was actually very into sensuality and sexuality. And then what happened is those beings who are all around the earth plane, as we know, that feed off of this energy, kept pushing, right? So they kept pushing, especially the polygamy agenda and this is how it's supposed to be, but this is what you said. And it's like the second chakra took off running, but it was fueled by these beings that were pushing him. He was the one who did it all. It was definitely his own power hungry sort of life incarnation. That was what he was putting forth. So it really was from him and his collective. But he had, I would call them more minions that kind of fed that ego purpose. So instead of being clear and being in the upper chakras and moving everything through and then journeying through the body, he got stuck in that second chakra and and rationalized everything, and then backed it up by, these other egoic men, women that weren't standing in their power, and these beings and frequencies that were feeding off of that, split. So that's kind of more what I see. It's like those little like beings on your shoulder that are really that they love feeding off drama and would love to see a disconnection. It's more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels to me like when he had subsequent revelations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that were, and that's where the polygamy came in and some of those other things that like he was talking to a whole other group of beings, right?
He
Like
totally was. Yes,
they
he was.
weren't, yeah,
He was off script.
yeah.
He did not vision. And the thing about it, right? So it's kind of like that's what happens, unfortunately, to a lot of these cult leaders, right? They get a vision, and then the corruption happens when they don't do the work on themselves. They don't deal with their shadow. They don't really stay in integrity and alignment and humility and so forth. They run with it, and they take this little bit of sparkle, that was started off being an amazing vision of utopia, and then they went running in the other direction. And that's exactly what happened to him. Yeah, I mean, I can really see, especially further down, and when Brigham Young got involved, and there was a lot of other like pretty demonic stuff, just to call it what it is. They're like, oh, good, we love this. We call it religion, but it's actually nothing to do with the Holy Spirit. They just love that. And so then it went off. And I actually feel like some of those more really demonic beings and entities were much more attached to Brigham Young. They were sort of, right?
That's my sense too. My sense, I actually feel like it was if Joseph Smith hadn't been murdered, right, that the whole thing probably would have petered out within a handful of years because it was getting more outlandish. It was getting, I think people would have been able to see through it, or he would have lost interest, or who knows what would have happened. But I feel like Brigham Young was actually much more damaging.
Yeah.
And much more tapped into other things. And he was the colonizer, and he was the one rounding everybody up and taking them to Utah. And he was creating all these cities, and he was making all the rules. And he was, it was in all of the, he created what we have today, right? That's much more so than Joseph Smith. And I feel like there was a lot more of that, like, obsession with power and money and women and all of those types of things were definitely not that Joseph Smith is off the hook for his 47 wives or
right
13 years old but or whatever the deal was, but yeah, I feel like that was when things really went sideways, and he must have, if I remember right, I think I saw that Brigham Young only had like one revelation, right? Like in all the time, right? And so he was like the admin guy, right? He wasn't even trying to talk to God. I mean, he said he was, right? But like that wasn't even how he was selling himself. And it was he needed people to build an empire, and he did what he needed to make that happen. And
absolutely, so interesting. Because if I look at even Brigham Young's like energy field energetically, I mean, it's very interesting, the beings that you come up across that are hanging around the earth layer. but they remind me, and I'm very careful when we talk about, different beings, obviously ETs, let's just say that's what it is. And because really there are a lot of, we don't want to just group together like reptilians and Draco, like a lot of them are there's a lot of honorable people. And I know a few channels that are incredible that are connected to those beings that have a lot of honor and respect. So I definitely
like
don't.
Humans.
Yes, exactly. They're more like the military. They have rules and honor, and I love that. However, these beings are more like fifth, like they're in the density is in the fifth, but it's that's why the fifth dimension is not all love and light, friends. Let's just get clear on that. Like fourth, fifth. It's not like, oh my God, rainbows and butterflies, and no one's ever going to attack us again. Bullshit. Right. So anyway, these beings are actually, I've been sort of coming into contact with them in my own journey a little bit, and they look a little bit like gargoyles with wings, and they this reminds me of them a little, and I feel them a lot. I think they're coming up a lot because we're getting rid of them, which is good, but I feel a lot in my shoulders and my back and in my heart chakra, like it's like a burden. And so I feel like he kind of was in cahoots with them more. Now, how would that look for him really? Is he actually like having these meditative conversations with that? No. But what would happen is he'd get these revelations and ideas, and we're talking about Brigham Young, by the way, and he downloads, and it was fueled by these beings. It was not coming from any other level. I don't ever see that he even really talked to higher sources in humility. He was more like, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. It's all very guttural of third chakra, fuel, fire. So, and he sort of had the stamina to blow shit up. Let's just put it that way. He was definitely corrupt. And for sure, he's going to be paying that back karmically for a long time. Boy, oh boy. Okay, so let's now talk about, let's see. Oh, the oaths that need to be revoked. So first of all, right away, I did a scan and I don't see any oaths. You've already done this work. You don't have any oaths. You have nothing unconscious hanging around. You're mainly exfoliating a lot of this right now and shedding it. And it really is paired with, again, not having to take full responsibility for the healing of this frequency. That's really important. They want you to know that. And especially your Bigfoot Sasquatch family really wants you to know that, because they feel like you've had this almost like a vendetta to straighten it out. Like you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna clean this crap up. This was horrible. And so you almost have to okay, they got you. Like it's your Bigfoot family's like, okay, we got you. We got you. We're all taking care of this now as a group, right? So you don't have to hold on to this. So, okay, specifically with you on the physical part of anything that maybe, I know you mentioned your left side. Of course, we know the left side, I believe, is masculine, right? So we're balancing out our yin and our yang, right? And so that's part of why you feel that intensity sometimes on that side, because you're balancing out your own polarization. And so literally they're giving me this like a meditation or a journey that you could do, so gentle, just seeing, Mother Earth coming up through your chakra channel and just imagining everything is now non-polarized and that everything is balanced and flowing, and releasing any of the constraints which were literally put around you around that lifetime. Especially, it actually happened in other lifetimes too, which they highlighted 3, but which we'll touch on, but that's what I'm seeing. So it's almost like this nurturing, like I always say Divine Mother, Divine Mother, when she holds you in her breast, it's the most loving, gentle frequency. You have to do nothing. You're completely held in the bosom of Mother. And it's like, that's what they want for you. I feel like because you've had this conflict of male, female, and justice and getting it all taken care of, that it's almost like your body is like, oh, in a tense strife, but it's beginning to melt away, and just literally tissue is just shedding. Like these energetic frames are just moving out of your frequency and out of your body and your chakras and your meridians and everything. Even as we're talking, it's happening. I can feel it. So, it's like coming out of your space intensely. This is so beautiful. I think you're going to feel it for another, I would say 2 or 3 days, especially. You'll feel a lifting and a lightening. And it's interesting. They're showing me on your property some flowers specifically. It's almost like a symbol for where, where you are right now. And they're these little beautiful, I don't know if you have just you have so much on your land that's so beautiful, but they're these little white flowers. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Is it yarrow? Yeah. That's usually what the ancestors show me. And it's blooming right now all over the place.
Oh, good. Oh my gosh. And let's just say right now, I haven't been to Amy's property yet. I will go there someday. I visited on the astrals. I'm sure I was there.
I'm sure.
I'll be like, hey, that's amazing. They're really showing me it's like a symbol. I can feel it in my body, and I feel emotion coming up, and I feel like almost like you've done the work. You deserve it. Now it's time to enjoy. Okay. So friend, let me say, let's go to the ancient lineages, because that was something that was coming up, and the ones that are both, okay. So we were looking at 2 parts. We're looking at what ancient lineages are activated in your current life, 1. And the second thing is what happened in the lineage to separate you from the land. So I love this. So, okay, so this is where it got kind of interesting when I was going into the Akash, and I was saying, okay, tell me about Amy's lineage. Of course, they already said the Scandinavian. They said, but you know that already. They said that to me. But then here's what's so interesting. They showed me 2 things. That I'll start with the one that popped up first. And that is, they showed me that you, in fact, are connected to the Essenes. And again, let's just call that for what it really is, not what we've been taught that it is, that it's a mystical Christianity, but it's not Christianity, because Jesus wasn't the prophet for them. So, and that is where male and female were much more in balance with each other. And there was much more of a clear representation of God within. That was the frequency of God within, and that all their teachings have been basically almost eradicated and lost. But this was, I feel like, definitely part of they're telling me it's like stewardship of the land, seeing the body as being the temple, and that they had candidates for different leadership roles who were women. It was just a totally different hierarchy. Like there wasn't really a hierarchy. There was almost like the Quakers, like where you have mutual respect. This is what they're showing me. Like I literally can't, I know enough about the Essenes, but I'm showing you what we're seeing on a spirit level, which is actually what did happen. So that is definitely part of your lineage. And as though you take a piece of what was the way Jesus was, but you would never take that on as your indoctrination. That would just, like the religious version of Christianity would just never, because you're kind of like, Jesus, he's one of us, but come on, we all have God in us. What are you talking about? It's just the sort of practical way of like looking at things. So, but they really noted that you were in a scene. I mean, that's really something that popped up. I don't know if you've ever had that revelation or seen that come through, but.
Well, potentially. And I can't remember if I asked another question on my list. So stop me if I have, but did I ask about a honeybee connection?
Yes. And that's a whole thing that came up too. So,
okay. And so I have the sense that the Essenes and bees are connected, and I've been getting more information about that lately, and was wondering kind of like where the connection was with that. But there's some information I can find online, but not a lot. So if you get anything about that,
oh my God. Okay. Well, first of all, side story. I'm still in the Akash. Just want to tell my guides that, but side story. So just another thing, in our family, we had a hive in our eaves in our front door. And my husband, of course, was in with his way he does, and goes, well, we got to get rid of those. I said, oh no, let me talk to the queen. Let me talk to the queen, please honor the process. He said, sure, no problem. And I kid you not, I psychically talked to the queen. I said, this is not going to be a safe space for you anymore. There's so many beautiful areas all around us. I want to protect and support you. I swear to God, we never saw one more bee after that. That's how intelligent, just not even one. Okay. Not even a one, not a nary, not a one. So, So, okay, here's what they're telling me about the queens, because that was part of it for you. Okay, let's see where my notes are. Ooh, are you ready?
I'm
Okay.
ready. Lay it on me.
I'm getting the chills. Okay, so I'll just tell you some of the words that kind of came up. So this is the words: populating, let's see, organizing, working with the queens. This is for you to reinstate and use the separation of male and female, followed by female frequency. Okay, so let's go into that a little more. I literally, and I kid you not, saw this of you communicating with the queen bees, and then having, oh, I'm getting the chills. Okay, having conversations with them and asking them of how can we repopulate so that Earth is tended to. That's totally your theme. And what can we do together? And it's almost like a meeting of the queens. And I just find it interesting, as you know well and good, that in the Mormon church, one of their symbols is the beehive.
That's why I was asking. I'm like, I know there's a connection here to the Mormons. I 100% know.
Yes.
I'm trying to put all the pieces together.
I know it's like a jigsaw puzzle. Well, I will tell you, as you know, they just like Christians did with all of us, earth-based religion folk, they perverted this amazing symbol. We know this.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's the deal, and I'd be so in on this. If you ever do this, I'm coming over. But they're telling me that you should be meeting with the queen bees and just connecting with them and just going out on your land and having a meeting with them and then setting your intentions. Because we all know, and it's just like the Sasquatch, the way the queen bee communicates is by that frequency, right? Mm-hmm. She can be in one place as a powerful being, but then she spreads out her web. Ooh, I'm getting the chills. And this is just like Sasquatch, that's how they communicate, and sending out those sonar, they're, out into their path. And again, this goes back to you with the net, right? So whatever it is that you want to heal, connect with, but also you can work with others doing this in your group in the Earth Tenders Academy. And this is just like, there's a lot of magic in here. And it's almost like the queen bees are feeling a little safer, and that they don't have to be quite as protected as they used to be. So they're willing to work with humans more, those that pay attention, for sure. So it's interesting. I feel like there's going to be one or two that you're going to work with that are like the queen of the queens. You know what I'm saying? Like the matriarch of the queen bees. Like there's a few that I feel like there is one in Montana. I'm feeling like in their network, there's probably 4 or 5 in the United States that are the queen of the queens. And it's a consciousness, they're telling me. And so when you network with them, oh boy, how much can they tell you about so many things? The other thing I'm getting information on, and this is something I got from that's coming to me. I got one of my guides is from a Syrian being, part of my soul family, right? And there was a time she told me 2 years ago that we shouldn't worry about the Earth because we are being about global warming and about our plants life, because we're being reseeded from you've mentioned this before, we were seeded from other planets. So not to worry. And here's what I'm seeing again. Okay, this is what they're telling me. Just like the Sasquatch, the queen bees are the connection for the galactic and these portals and the stargates, that they can also connect with those elemental beings that are helping to reframe the entire web of the planet. Wow, this frequency is so gentle, Amy. It's really so sublime and very, very, it's a very fun, it's like the finest honey, the finest gold frequency. And it literally, I see it like populating the entire planet as a connection. And you know what they're telling me it's like a symbol for? It's like in the connective tissue when you have a lubricant. It's like the connective tissue of the entire all of our, as we move into crystalline frequency, that's like one of the pieces of our DNA. So and everything around us, plants, animals, everything. So I feel like this is your next iteration of some work is this way. It's a much finer, delicate frequency Whereas, you've been working like seriously, like getting in there with a lot of that, energy of masculine of like, okay, we're going to get in there and we're going to clean this crap out and we're going to move all this, right? Like kind of like in your male, which we love that. And now it's like, they're literally telling you, okay, back up, sit in your feminine frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk.
It's felt that way all year this year.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm such getting a download.
Totally
I'm so going to be here for whatever you do. I don't know what you're planning, but I'm coming over. Okay. But I'm just saying, it's almost like literally you're connecting with all of these lighter frequency, these plant beings, of course, but the queen bees are a huge part of it. Huge, like massive. Ooh, yeah. And I can't wait to hear what you come up with after this. I'm so excited. Like really.
Okay, well, I have to share some of these
pieces
that led to this, just because it'll even connect pieces for you of what's coming in.
So, okay, tell me.
So I had that journey, that experience with the snakes and all of that. Within a week or so after that, I was making my bed one morning. I found a dead bee under my pillow, and I was like, I don't even see, like, how did this even get in the house? How could this even happen? So like, I knew there was some message there. And right away when I tuned in, it was like, it's the Mormon connection. And I was like, oh yeah, bees, got it. And so I knew that was continuing. Well, like less than a week after that, a friend messages me, like literally in the middle of the night. She was text the next morning that she's like, I was reading this book and I got this huge download. Like I had to stop everything I was doing and tell you about this book. Like you need to read this book. And it was about bees. And I was like, okay, well, I had shared about on Instagram about the bee under my pillow, and so I was like, "Did you see my stories last week, or like, did this come out of the blue?" She's like, "No, I haven't been on Instagram in weeks. I didn't know anything about it." So like, clearly, I didn't get the message, with the bee under the pillow. So now they're sending it to me in another way. So it's this amazing book that's written by a natural beekeeper, right? So she channels with the bees.
Oh my gosh!
And so a lot of the book is channeled messages directly from the bees. And one of the things, there's tons of connections for me that like helped me put a lot of things in perspective. But one of the things, and I think this connects back to the Essenes, among other religions, is that the bees are explaining how the queens and the drones, right, like find each other in a mate, right? So a queen bee only leaves the hive one time, well, unless there's a swarm. So it leaves one time, does all of her mating, and then goes back to the hive, and that's the only time she leaves. And the way that they find this meeting place, like the drones hang out, is their vortexes, portals, right? So the bees can see them and they know like, oh, this is a vortex where the energy is heightened. And this description in this book is just, I can't even, I'll have to like read it for the podcast just to explain. Like, it's the most beautiful description I've ever heard of. But about how they come and they're in this vortexing energy and they're flying around with each other. And of course, the drones, after they mate, they die immediately. And so like the sacrifice that they're making for the, good of, bee kind, and humankind too, whatever. But it mentions about how, these heightened energy spots are the same spots that people have built temples, right? That like historically people knew where the vortexes, where the portals were, and that's where they built their temples. And so these very ancient mystery school, or whatever, different types of groups always lived with the bees, because the bees and the people, these were their sacred places together. And to me, that just made like all of these neurons fire in my brain. Right? About like, how many times have I lived with the bees, or how many, how many times have I made these connections before? So I had a feeling that there was like some thread that went through this like ancient lineage, this bee connection, that then would have somehow felt familiar with the Mormons, right? Like in some way, where it's like, oh, there's this bee connection again. And what I don't know is how much, Joseph Smith or Brigham Young or whoever kind of like, they're kind of known for stealing or taking from other organizations to create their, their rituals and whatnot. And so I've had the sense that while outwardly the church says like, oh, this is a symbol of our group productivity and working together. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's it at all. Like, I think it's symbolic of, whole different things that really come from ancient traditions. And, coincidentally can symbolize working together and productivity and hard work and all of that. But I think it's way deeper than that. And so I was just really curious. So thank you for making that
Oh my God.
connection through all of those pieces.
Wow. That blows my mind. Blows my mind. Oh, I love it so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will have to start talking to the queen bees and
Oh
see
my God, you totally will. That is going to be
what they have to
magical.
say, what they have to say to me.
Oh my gosh. And I just love how your friend was like, and by the way, there's this book you need to read. And I love that. It's just like edifying all these things that are so mystical that you and we all get, and we have to interconnect
Yeah.
and put it together so we can basically go, here it is, world.
Right.
You know,
Like
I mean,
all of you different,
yes,
people
we all got to put all the
who have
pieces.
all contributed to this, because I'm just sitting here some days being like, I don't know why there was a bee under my pillow.
You tell me.
Exactly.
Well, and I still say it's the Bigfoot Sasquatch that brought me to you too. So because they were like network, this is a friend of yours. Bring yourself. Okay, I'm here. I'm listening. And then me with my bee. Oh my God. Okay, let me talk to you though now, if I may, friend, about there was another piece, and I'm gonna look at it right now because it had to do with the fungi collective. Okay, here we go. And by the way,
Speaking of networks, they're the next ones to chime in.
I was just going to say, well, and I have to tell you, everywhere I'm going, I'm seeing, and you'll have to say it right, that mushroom. What's the name of the mushroom again?
The Amanita Muscaria.
Muscaria. I'm seeing it everywhere now. And literally, I was in a record shop with my daughter 2 days ago, and I saw an album cover with it on there. I was like, this is Amy all over again.
They are fully in the collective consciousness right now. They want to be seen
and
found and discovered, and yeah.
Oh my gosh. But really, so you already probably are doing this, but I haven't listened to this part when you've been talking about it on Instagram, but they're telling me they would like you to grow it on your land, and they really want you to normalize it as the medicine that it is, and to be a representative of this incredible healing frequency, and just a partner. And here's what they want to say to you. You just have this beautiful way of making these very seemingly mystical and out there things very much grounded and normalized. We know that's your gift. And so that's why, as you did with, that incredible guest you had, who that's her life's work is to do that. Forgive me, I don't remember her name, but when that's part of what they want you to do, they want that to be almost like a medicine that you have on your property, so you can really just pull from it, refer to it, and be able to, validate it. Their energy of the fungi, they're so playful. I mean, they're
funny.
Oh, they're so funny. Aren't they?
Really funny.
They're like, they're very much, they remind me a little bit of like a mixture of fairy, and I wouldn't say elf. I wouldn't say that, but they definitely, they have their own frequencies.
Gnome, maybe.
Yeah, gnome. Yeah. But I don't know. Gnomes are also kind of serious. You know how they're kind of mine's a little bossy. So anyway, I don't know. He's not as fun. He's a little more like a bit of a curmudgeon. But anyway, so no, I feel like they're very playful and dancy and fun. And I think they're very connected to dancing. Oh, that's right. Here comes the part about the drum again. That's right. This is why I feel like the vision I got for you was so mystical. They talked again about the importance of just having that medicine on your land, and they see you as being like a heartbeat of Gaia, as we know this, and that is the frequency that comes from your land and from your heart. And that you're kind of like a drummer for this frequency, and of that's really important medicine. And that it's not like you're responsible for, doing a million, like every weekend you have hosting journeys, but just having the energy on your land and then sharing it and making it very accessible for people. And then it's, when you have that person who just like holds the space, and that's the heartbeat. And again, and with your drumming, they really showed me that was just a big part of like you have a heart for it, as they have big hearts, and they definitely have big hearts. The fungi, oh my goodness, they have huge heart chakras too, just like Bigfoot. Yeah,
with me right here on my desk.
Oh my gosh, how beautiful.
Yep, just
Oh
hanging
my
in
gosh. Just hang in there, holding the frequency,
there.
sharing, it's like a crystal,
Yep.
sharing love in a different way. Okay, I want to swing back, if I may, to this, some of your ancient ancestors too, which I hadn't touched on. And that is, they were showing me again, and as I mentioned to you earlier, it was very interesting because my location kept moving when I saw them. First, I was literally, I'm not kidding, I was in Portugal. And then I was like up near like Scotland and in the Welsh area. And I was moving around. And so I was having to move my logical thinking really out of this way. And I was like, okay, can you tell me who are these people? And so they called them this group of people the wanderers. And I said, oh, is this like gypsies, and or nomads? And they said, well, we wouldn't call ourselves nomads or gypsies because that wasn't our frequency, but it was much more like um, free and like communing with the land on obviously a very deep level, moving from place to place. They were very mystical because I didn't even get like I'd have to go in and like do a little psychic surgery to see exactly where they start because they're very expansive. They're so connected to the ethers that they aren't even. I almost go, are you third dimensional beings or where are you from? And I get this sense of like transporting into the fourth dimension, like moving in and out and moving around the land a lot. So it's hard, they're hard to pin down. And so I almost wonder, were they physical beings? Like, I don't know, but that is a group that is really a part of your lineage. Let me go in a little closer and just to see if they give me anything else.
I've seen this before. I've seen
You
this.
have? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
like I was like this little being with like a little suitcase
Yes.
traveling from like town to town and whatever like they needed me to do, but it was like on an energetic level.
Yes.
Whatever they I would show up in a town and like do energy work or
Oh my God.
whatever.
Yeah, I need to get into this because I feel like
But I'm curious, that's all I know. So I
I
yeah,
got it.
anything else you can
Okay.
get.
Let me just see what okay. So here's what they're telling me. They're time travelers. That's okay. So, okay. So they're time travelers. So they're not even like literally part of our time frame timeline. And they arrive and show up wherever they need to be. Okay. So, and I'm like, okay, where are you from? Where do you originate from? All my usual questions. And I'm asking them and they're kind of laughing at me. That's really charming. No, I'm like, oh, we love
That's
your
not important.
questions are
That's not a
so
thing.
charming. You're so earthy. I know that's what they do. That's why I was like, wow, I can't even get a hold on you guys. Okay. So they are saying that they are mystics, but they also have the ability to shapeshift. Not for healing purposes. They are telling me that. So, and they have traveled throughout time. So okay, there we go. They understood the assignment. So they show up wherever they're needed and they kind of like, not, they show up when they're needed to do different things. So you're really tied into them. So they say you could call us time travelers. You could call us but we all understood that we needed to be on the earth plane because of how much help the earth needs. But we are really able to bridge the gap between the third and the fifth dimension because we are very connected to the elemental realm, the fairy realm, and also, excuse me. Let's see what else they're talking about. They are saying they're stewards of Gaia and that they play in that field with the gnomes and the fairies and the unicorns and the dolphins, but they also they have a real affiliation or a part of like connected to Sasquatch, so they can Bigfoot because they can come together in communion and almost like when the Sasquatch have their meetings, they have meetings like this with their kind. They said, and we appreciate the Sasquatch because the Sasquatch are a lot like us in how we move through time. So, but the thing is they would materialize and be living amongst us. It's not like they were just hanging around like spiritual beings. They would appear in different important times on the timeline. So let's just look back, just for my human brain. I'm just saying, can you please flatter me and just let me see a few times when you've shown up? Okay, so they said, oh my gosh, we were around the biblical times all the time because they really needed our help. And a lot of the people, it looks like, where they would show up is where people felt the most downtrodden and cast to the side by religious groups. And especially, it wasn't just then, it was like amongst all the Pharisees and the extreme, and how much people were just calling out their neighbor and exposing people. And there was just, it was almost like the witch trials, everywhere. So they came around and they would just kind of soothe everything. They would try and soothe energy. It was interesting. That's one time frame. Let's see. Interesting. But then they have to pull away when there's too much like catastrophic stuff off, and they tend to live, and they'll be in like Nepal, India, or more undercover, where, because they're not as much in the Western plains where there's so much conflict and, jurisdictions and things like that. But that is really what they're showing me. I mean, also trying to get a number, like how many souls were involved in this group. And they're showing me like 1,000 to 2,400. So it's not like a huge group. But these are, the way they are saying you can connect with your group now is just through meditation and connecting in with them and saying, how can I help? Here's an interesting thing. Okay, so I think I've talked to you about this before, and just for your audience's sake, I mentioned this to you before. One of the things that I have been gotten insight on is being able to discover implants that are inside of each of our bodies. And usually it's almost like this karmic device that we each incarnate with that limits us in some way and kicks in with programming. Well, right now on the planet, we're releasing a lot of this. A lot of us, especially if you're on the path, are releasing this finally, so we can move past this chain of karma. So they're kind of, what I'm seeing with them, this is so interesting, that if you, like, say you're doing healing work on anything, the land, a person, what have you, you can connect with the travelers, the wanderers, and just say, okay, where are the installations on the land of these sorts of like programs? Because they're not just in people, as we know, they're also in land and in certain heavily populated places. So, and they're showing me, they're kind of buried almost like a time capsule in these different areas. And they're saying, if you work with them, they can show you where they are. Kind of like, I work with Archangel Raphael to find them in my clients. And so this is for you, could be another way to access, because they are part of your soul family. They really are very interesting. And they're saying, we are timeless. We're above religion. If you want to connect with the earth or do anything, we're your group, because they were never indoctrinated by a religion, and they never succumbed to the games of the Matrix. So they mainly are here as helpers, but they're a huge part of it. And I do feel like they came from the stars. That's where they originally came from. And let's see where. Okay, so this is so interesting. They're telling me that initially, as we know, how Metatron was, who was he originally from the Bible? I'm trying to remember, one of the brothers, right? So Metatron was a wanderer.
I forget all his incarnations.
Yes, I know. He's like, it's like there's two of them. There's Cain and Abel, not Cain and Abel, but anyway, there's two of them. He was one of them. But that they're saying how Metatron, as we know, he was one of the archangels that ascended, as you know, into going past the physical world and the body, but he understands the journey of the body, right? Mm-hmm. So, and they're saying that Metatron was one of us, that he can time travel, he can shapeshift, right? So he works with, being able to move time around, as well as the sacred geometry. This is a really interesting tale, I will tell you. So he was one of it's definitely like the star group for sure. And do you have any questions about them? Because they're kind of,
yeah. So,
please ask.
Is this sometimes who I'm working with in my dreams when I'm like out?
Okay, let's take a peeky peek. Let's take a peek. I love it. Let me see. Yes, they have one or two, a primary, there's a female representative there, and then there's a male that they're kind of representing for you, and they're working for you. They're telling me a lot in your heart chakra to move your heartstrings. And I'm saying, okay, what does that mean? And I think it has to do with this lighter frequency. It's not, to activate your heart, but it's more of like It's literally like touching this internal part of your inner being so you can fine tune like you do with your drumming. And that's your sacred rhythm with these finer frequencies like you would see in the queen bee. That's a very delicate, finer, but so powerful frequency. So I feel like they're helping you activate that. And that's part of what you're going through as you're, moving around through the astrals. And they're saying rummaging around on the astral. That's interesting. Kind of
That's how
moving
it feels
through.
sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like they're really saying like, oh yeah, you're getting rid of like your grandma's baggage. They're getting rid of all these old suitcases. They're showing me and all this old stuff that you used to carry for your family line. And they're really trying to rid you of that to lighten your frequency to be not, again, everyone's here agreeing on the same thing for you, Amy. And that is releasing yourself of the burden of having to carry to make sure this thing works out, the family line. And you have a real obligation for that. And you have to know you have fulfilled it. You already are, just because but in your delight, don't take any heaviness with you, they're saying, and release the frequency. Again, it's like, almost like, I hate to use that Disney image, but you know how they do when they give you images, they're just like, everything is being taken and transformed. Everything is being lightened. Everything is being moved. The frequency is more delicate and higher, and much more, delicate. And I
Can you
think that,
ask them if they have a specific connection with the mushroom? Because that's what I'm getting
ooh,
while we're
okay, let
talking.
me ask them. Well, she's showing me her arm, scooping it up like this and smile and like holding it like a prized like batch of whatever she's just grown. Yes. And she said the magic of the mushroom. Okay, let me see what she's saying specifically. She's saying the magic of the mushroom should not be mistaken for something fanciful and flighty that people used to assume that it was. The magic of the mushroom, as we know, is medicine. And it helps us to remember who we are. And it is not a fanciful, flighty object to play with at parties. That's what she's saying. Much more, it's part of embracing your essence. And also she's saying it has a way of working with those more dominant energies in our space to tranquilize them slightly so that the other frequency can kind of come out and heal. And that the heavy parts that feel like we have to do this thing and we got to push through, and that heavily masculine energy so the heavy male frequency can be literally like that's the beauty of the mushroom, as we know, a fungi, is it goes off. The heavy male that feels like it needs to carry the weight and do the thing and be in the army can just kind of release and go and transmute, and that we don't need to carry it anymore. Right. And it's done its job, and we thank it, we bless it, and we move it on. And like, now we're going to have this divine feminine frequency take over, not to dismiss the male, but to allow the male to relax and to be able to be in harmony with what is now our new earth, frequency, what we all want to create. And so especially, that's why you have in the Wanderers and this female, she kind of has those really like magical clothes on too, like a felt hat with a point, kind of like a gnome, but she looks like a woman. And she has kind of like those dresses on like a gypsy would have in the 1800s, and she's very magical looking. So and she's just got the mushroom, the basket of mushrooms like that. Yeah, so she's definitely that. They're all kind of in communion together, like they all understand each other, they all get the frequency, they all understand the righteousness of it, and how it is just this incredible experience that can remind people of how easy things can be, and to let go of all this difficulty and this strife and this polarization. I mean, that is really the theme, is releasing all that density and the polarizing, energies that have just screwed up our ecosystem, including us, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of what they were showing me while you were talking, was that connection, the time travel connection, because the mushrooms are time travelers
Oh my
as
gosh.
well, and will work a lot on the timeline. So I'm like, there's got to be a connection there. But yeah, I'm curious. I don't know if they'll show you that, but you know what off planet connection the mushrooms have. Like, where do the mushrooms come from? Because
I know, I know.
I don't think they're from Earth.
Mhm. I was actually, let me tune into my guide for that because she's a kind of almost like a bit of a, she is a water keeper and a sorcerer. She's like a spiritual biologist, sort of this, and she's very technical. So let me just see, because I'm seeing the letter M and, and I feel like she's telling me it's in the Pleiades in Merope. That's what I'm seeing right now, that it came from a star, that it started as in the star system. And that's what she's showing me. I think it's Merope, that Meropa that's in the Pleiades, which is so interesting since we go back to the very beginning, is like Joseph Smith, his origins are in the Pleiades. Not that that matters in this timeline, but if we're talking about a frequency of love and divine feminine and healing, we're talking about that frequency and that how that can be easily dismantled because it can seem vulnerable and it can be like actually disrupted as a resource, obviously. But that's what they're showing me now, that it was dropped somewhere in Meropa and cultivated. Oh, and I can almost see like a swirl of golden energy coming about, like medicine, like it's like, and being created and mixed together and then coming down with, through and turned into form. Like it's like a biology lab, right? So, or a lab for creating seedlings. And it's like, witches mixing things together and then bringing it down in its form. And there's something they're telling me it has to do with synchronicity. That's another thing they're saying about it. It's a synchronistic agent as well. So it makes all the timelines make sense. It makes synchronicities happen. It makes the human like fucking wake up, Go,
I
oh,
love that.
hello, that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
synchronistic. There's
But you
something
know what? It's such a gentle medicine. It really is. It's so different than what people expect, I think. And
exactly,
yeah, yeah. So
exactly.
I'm receiving. I understand what they're saying.
Yeah,
So
they're saying Merope. Yeah, that's what they're telling me. And it's interesting because I know there's someone else I know who's, I think she had a reading once, someone else I know is a healer, and she was told that she was from a line of priestesses from Merope and that she was a healer. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting because I of course, we're all learning as we're learning in this lifetime, right? But I definitely feel this frequency. There's also a lot of water energy there, which is so interesting. There's something about the water in that place as well, that they use it like a bath, of healing. And it's like very intentional. They gather from it and they bring it into, their own light bodies, and they do, healing and restorative work. And that's exactly like one of the essence frequencies that the mushroom was made of, is that like really like loving, gentle, soothing frequency, and why it's so medicinal, especially for when there's so much pain and distortion, you know. Um, so interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what they're
Sorry,
doing.
that was like kind of off
No,
topic,
I'm
but
so
I
about
feel
it.
like all these things that are coming in for me are like all related to this story I'm supposed to tell, number one, and then
Yes.
also like they all fit together in some way that I haven't totally comprehended. So
I'm in love with this story. I know, because I was telling you, you know, I've done past life readings for so many years, and everything is usually, I can see, okay, where are we? We're in Egypt, we're in Greece, and this is the group, and this is the information, and tick, tick, tick. But this is the first time I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at, like.
well, what's really interesting is the first thing I thought of when you were like, oh, I was here and I was there and I didn't know, was that so my first psilocybin experience, there was a point where I was doing that. And I was like walking the streets of Germany. And then I was in, and I was kind of confused because it was like happening really fast. And
Yeah.
it was very much like me going to all these different places. And I was like, oh, are these past lives? And the mushroom was like, do you want them to be? I was
Like, you're in control. Thanks a lot. Thanks a
and
lot.
so at the time I just took it as like, oh, they're just showing me like how easy it is to like move timelines, you know, because
Yeah.
it was like, oh, I'm in the 1800s, oh, I'm in the 1500s. Like I really took it as that. But
Yes.
during this piece, I'm like, I think there was a more personal level to it
There was
outside
a
of
hundred
that. It's just
percent.
being like, yeah, yeah, you can just materialize where you need to be. So like, yeah, do you want it to be alive? Just go there.
Biolocating. It's fun. What's the big deal? Well, and I was like, why am I in Portugal? And why am I in Scandinavia? Why am I in Wales? What am I doing? I was like,
Yeah, that makes perfect
so
sense.
mad. It's so
That's when
magical.
I've yeah, that I had that experience of just like very easily, obviously the mushroom was assisting, like
Mhm.
moving from like through timelines and just being like, oh, you know, now I'm just walking down the street in 1800s Germany and you're like, how did I get here?
Exactly. And I think the message too, and I've been getting this also in my own space, is that it's so easy. We make it so complicated and it's so simple. And the
Yeah,
magic of that mushroom and the magic of the bees and the magic of, me just talking to the bee one time, it
right.
was like, it wasn't this big labor 20
No,
step process of ritual. It was
right.
no, it
Because
was like,
they understand frequency and they understand how to, so if you can vibe with them on that frequency, like it's easy
yes.
for them to understand you.
They don't need all of the intellectual verbiage. And in
Yeah.
fact, that slows you down. Just like Bigfoot, and Sasquatch, I always feel like that they are also like, you guys
Oh,
have,
they don't talk at all. I mean,
they're
sometimes,
like
but like they're just like
frequency.
there. Yeah.
Yes, heartbeat. I know it's so interesting. We have so much to learn, obviously, from these
Those
incredible,
realms.
incredible
Yeah.
beings. Oh my gosh. So listen, friend,
I know. I'm getting you off
together, do
track.
you have more? I know. I'm looking at all of the questions. And I don't know, do you have any other questions? I feel like I kind of covered all the things that I got, but I wanted to know, do you have more questions?
How do we do this now, right? Like, do they have any suggestions of like what does it look like in this timeline to kind of make that reality in a way that does not lean on these like, you know, charismatic cult leaders
Yes.
to create a vision that no matter what, like when you do go back through time, is never sustainable, right?
Oh
It
gosh.
all falls apart.
And here's the beautiful part about right now. And as we're even talking about this, and my sixth chakra is just opening up so wide, and which makes me feel so touched. The difference between then and now is that the whole movement is that people find it within themselves. They don't have a leader. They don't have a man up there as on the pulpit telling them what to do. The whole synchronization, and what's different about now is that you literally find everything you need. It begins within listening to your own heart, your own frequency, and balancing out your own energies. And that's the thrust of the work. And that's what, every part of all these beings that we're talking about, and including our own journeys, is all about that healing process of not like, again, Joseph Smith, he got the vision and then he went and like began controlling instead of just living in that harmony and frequency and living it authentically when in his own life. He started manipulating around it, as did others. And so I almost feel like I see essentially the beings which are now making up the younger generation and how they literally will not tolerate someone out of alignment. They just won't do it. And if you're not living by the truth, so they won't be, some will be, obviously, there's always those that will be led by these, but it'll be sort of like when you were young in that Mormon life and you could see the pulpit leaders being so out of alignment. That's how it's going to be for the new generation. And they're going to live life on their own terms. They're setting the frequency to be their own nomads, right? So they can be wanderers and they can go anywhere in the world and create the life they want. They don't have to be set in one location with one frequency and in any way. Certainly there'll be those that stay in a place and they create this group of people around them. But I feel like less and less people will be attracted to that frequency because, again, even if you're saying all the right things that are all the buzzwords about ascension and spiritual growth and anything that could capture people in, there are going to be people who give their power away to these other people. But all of the beings that are surrounding us now who are helping us, and all of us who are there's so many of us who are saying, listen to your own alignment, and I feel like that's where it's going to come down to. It's going to be much more about individual path and groups and masses. And I feel like that's what they're telling me too. All my guides and guardians are saying the same thing. That's what it's about. It's about freedom, and it's about responsibility for self, and then responsibility for what the impression you make on the world around you. So your frequency, living in alignment, all those things. And that's what you want to model to the world around you, not listening to it. And as far as, it's so interesting about what you're saying about the digital world, the AI, things like that. I feel like that's one of those things, like when you start out, let's even say something simple, like you start out a new eating plan and you think, oh, this is going to be great, I'm going to do this thing, it's going to be like that, but then you outgrow parts of it because it just doesn't fit you anymore. And I feel like that's what it's going to be like with the digital world too. Like it's a means to an end. It's like why you and I are like getting off Facebook, and we just, like, we're just like,
Yeah.
ugh, over
Yeah,
it.
it's going to be like the shiny new object for a while, and then after, some period of
Yeah,
time, at least some percentage of the people are going to be like, this is not okay for me. It's not
it
healthy for
doesn't feel
me.
good.
Yeah, it's not what I want.
Yeah, and the beauty of having these amazing, like the natural medicines available to us is it puts us straight and square in alignment with our truth. It's like we can't even dodge that bullet anymore. We're standing straight in alignment with ourselves. And that's where the call up is being right. Everyone is being called up to be their most authentic selves, not another version of it. And I feel like those will definitely supersede all of the other sort of factions, and also the fear that goes along with people worrying about mass destruction of the planet and AI taking over, whatever, like all that's just going to blow away, and we're going to move into our own alignment. And that's like the new era. It's like taking the 60s or even the 1800s of coming to like wanting to strike gold, whatever it was, or all the Europeans moving here, and my ancestors as well, and finding their own paths, right? It's so interesting though, because I also see people are going to be relocating, and we're going to be repopulating in other areas, which is really exciting, because then we don't have one dogma, we have a blend and non-polarization, really, right? So that's the main frequency. Now, that being said, there's a few fights we have ahead of us. There'll be some things that are definitely dark that I can feel. I don't do predictions or specifics, but I see dark, there's dark, that energy like you saw.
Yep.
Under Salt Lake City, that's around. We all know that. But those will be people's, they're saying cross to bear, but their thing to have to overcome is not giving their power away to these other frequencies or energies, right?
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It definitely, yeah, is along the same path and the same direction. But it's just so curious to hear, um, everybody's different,
Yes, the different
insight on that,
exactly.
and feeling. But yeah, I mean, personally kind of get that same sense. And like I said, like even where I've been feeling, well, probably more like a year and a half, but definitely for this year is it's just like very calm, very light energy, very yeah, like ease in things, and like that 90% of it is like that's not even a thing. It doesn't matter. You don't have to
Yeah.
think about it. You don't have to work on it. You don't have to, it's just not a thing. Just
Yeah.
grow your vegetables and, lay in the sun and live your life and everything's fine. Like that's,
Exactly.
I mean, literally, that's
Yeah, exactly. Everything's going to be okay. Do what you love. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing,
yeah.
and stay and a deepening. And I also feel like that energy is there for us for a deepening of what is good for us, which means we cut out all the distraction, right? Like you just said.
Yeah.
So we don't have that pull of like, what is everybody else doing? How's that
Yes.
working? It's like, if
Yes.
it doesn't align, don't do it.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, when it's quieter, you can be like, well, what do I really want to do today? Like
yes,
there's no distraction.
exactly. This is so true. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been amazing.
So
Thank
good.
you for making so many of those connections for me, and I can't My head's already swimming with like, how am I gonna,
Oh my
how am
gosh.
I gonna put this all together?
I
Yeah. Oh my
cannot wait to see. I can't wait to see what you end up, beautifully sewing together in your amazing, beautiful way. Your storytelling. I can't wait. It's like putting a baby in your lap, though, isn't it? And like, what do I do with this baby
It's
now?
daunting, and I know. I mean, I just. I mean, they've been pushing me on it for a while, and like initially, I was just like, I just don't even know how to do that. But it's gotten louder and louder and louder, and I'm like,
I
I guess I
want
just have to
to.
figure it out.
Okay, I want to tell you one last message, and it's from the bees, the queen,
Mm-hmm.
and the queens are saying, "Who better than to tell you how to put something together than us?"
I
And I
love
see
it.
this picture of you
They
sitting
do
out.
everything perfectly.
They do, and you're just in their frequency, and so they're saying you're one of us. So I don't know if you have an Adirondack chair at your house, but I feel like I'm seeing you sitting in an Adirondack chair with them. Do you have an Adirondack chair? Okay.
In the garden.
Okay, well, there you buy. There you go.
Probably where they are, yeah.
I'm sure they said sit in your Adirondack chair with like a blankie. They're saying a blankie. That's how they talk to me, with your
A
bare
blankie.
feet, and just muse and let them free their little frequencies like just come to you. And they're again, it's like make your work light, right? Make your work light. That's why we work as a team. They're really going to teach you a lot. And especially as being, we know the queen bee, you said it yourself, the queen bee does one little task and sits back and just, she has her people doing her work, and it's kind of like that for you. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
is. It's like, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
bees, send me the people.
Okay, I love it. They're coming in. I can feel them. Okay, let's close out our session, shall we, my
Send me somebody who helps make this
Send
story make
me
sense.
the mama bee. Amanita Grande. I almost saw, and I don't know if I don't know how you feel about tattoos, but anyway, it'll be something. I saw like a queen bee tattoo.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay, let's close our session out.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, what a gorgeous session. We want to thank the bees, the guardians, the mushrooms, the plants, the wanderers, and all these amazing guardians and spirits that showed us for us today. What a beautiful reading for Amy, and I'm so honored to witness it. We want to thank you for everything. We now are closing this session. We're closing Amy's records. The records are now closed. Amen. The records are now closed. Amen. The records are now closed. Amen. Woo, we release it.